What is going on, Forehead fans? Welcome to Fourth and Frames, one of the fantasy football podcasts here at fantasyandframes.com. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. I got the Frames crew with me. Um, Man, we haven't talked about something all season, ironically, that we were very high on going into this year. It was a lot of fun last year. The Forehead Championships tournament, suffice it to say, it's been very competitive along all four major divisions, as well as the constellation round division. And we figured we'd give you all who are out there just a heads up on like how's everyone doing in terms of playoff proceedings. The top two teams in each division advance to the playoffs, and then we filter out from there. Of course, those two teams also get donations to their charities as well as some swag here and there, just to help out. And so we're going to go through and talk about the top two in each division, and mention if we have the information yet about the charity they're representing. Again, this is all about charity. This is all about giving. Scott Fish, we all know what Scott Fishbowl represents in the fantasy football community, and how that's helped with Fantasy Cares. And that's kind of what inspired us to do the 4-Eye Championships, just to do our part in helping those less fortunate. So let's start with Jeremy and the Jeremy Noble. He is the commissioner of the Millhouse division. And currently in first place, we have Andy Wingerson representing Autism Speaks. And in second place, we got Earl English, Earl English, I believe, was like the person who won one of the spots we were auctioning off, I think, during the summer, during the one of that race game we did. I forget what it was.
10-yard rush, 100-yard rush,
100-yard rush. Yeah. So he was one of the winners there, representing the American Cancer Society. Teddy Ricketson, who we have not had on in forever. Come on, Teddy. Did you all see, by the way, his wife post a video of him as soon as the Braves won the World Series last night? Like,
no, I didn't see it.
It was great. Like as soon as he was like recording it with his phone as the final out, and then as soon as the final out happened, he like just ran to the back of the room they were in, and just was like, covering his mouth in shock. And I texted him. I'm like, dude, what's going through your mind right now? He's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm happy. I'm crying. I'm speechless. I'm like, just live it up, enjoy it. So congratulations to you and all the Braves fans out there in getting the World Series. Anyhow, he's in the Velma Dinkley division. Velma from Scooby-Doo. And in case you haven't noticed, folks, all the division names are all four-eyed characters in the cartoon world. We have in first place Puppy Power. Yes, I like that name because I'm getting actually a puppy in a few weeks. So I like this person already. Not to win the entire thing, but where he's at right now. Stephen Ross doing Cash for Kids. Then we have Dynasty Micah _ Dynasty Fantasy Football. Need to get his charity information soon, but he is in second place currently. Then we go to the Egon Spangler division. That's mine, which, by the way, guys, a huge Ghostbusters fan when we were kids, or some of us were kids, and looking forward to this Ghostbusters movie in a few weeks. I'm a huge fan. So anyhow, Egon Spangler. First place, we have Kiki Hernandez representing Canadian Diabetes. And second place, yours truly, representing the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation. Nate, you got the Daria Morgendorfer division. Daria for MTV's Daria. First place, which when I saw this and you showed me today,
shall not be named.
Yeah, he like, hello, Voldemort. How you doing there, Ryan? Ryan Weiss, the defending champion from 2020, representing the Women's Sports Foundation. Man, he's killing it again, second year in a row. And in second place, Nate Markham. And Nate, why don't you tell people who are you representing? You told us pre-show, but I figure you do a much better job because it is a very it's a noble cause and something I think I think the 4-Eyed fans like to hear.
Yeah, one of my good friends, Terry Brown, is unfortunately suffering from a brain tumor, and his wife, who successfully beat breast cancer a few years back, and their two beautiful children. Obviously, nothing is going to happen, but I know that even with him missing work and things of that nature, I'd like to help kick back just a little towards their direction. Obviously, he's going to beat this and he'll be fine, but it's always nice to have a little extra support. And it's, as if they weren't rooting for me before, they probably weren't, probably sick of seeing, he is my success here with everything, with being second place. But actually, they just want to see Ryan lose. That's the key. Everybody wants to see Ryan lose, and now there's a vested interest in that. Is you can help support Terry and April.
Wow,
while seeing Ryan lose. What?
Help Ryan. This is going to sound so horrible.
No.
Help Ryan Weiss lose for brain cancer. That's
correct. Exactly.
Okay.
Maybe you shouldn't set your lineup, Ryan. Maybe you should care. I don't know. He's already played the.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so.
Rounding out our divisions here. So those 4 divisions we just talked about, those are the people who are actually in the official tournament. Wow, I say tournament one more time. I'm going to smack myself. But we do have a consolation division, the Clark Kent division, which Brian, you're heading that up. So what happens there? You don't make the playoffs in the 4A championships. What you do though is get some dinero donated to your charity of choice, as well as an automatic bid to the 4A championships tournament next year in 2022. And in first place is Mr. Aardvark Avenger. Yeah, we need to know who you are. So just a little heads up out there, Aardvark Avenger. We're going to find out who you are and what you're representing. Yes, so we will get to him and bring him up in a later show. And with that, that's going to wrap up our 4A championships update. We will be doing this weekly on Fourth and Frames, just because we want to keep you all informed. And the playoffs are, you can say the word playoffs and not cringe right now. We're getting to that point where you guys start making that push. If you're 3 and 4, what is it? We're 7 games in. Yeah, no, 4 and 4.
You're 8 games. We're in week 9 now.
5 and 3, 4 and 4. Yeah,
that's 6 and 2, 7 and 1.
There we go.
Got it all figured out now.
Yep, I'm not good with numbers. That's not my strength.
Okay.
I understand that. So that's why you're in here, Nate. So fantastic.
Thanks. Exactly.
All right. Anyhow, let's get into some news real quick. I don't know about you all, and I was telling Brian about this, but as soon as Derrick Henry went down, I felt sadness in my heart. I got to be honest with you. Such a great story. Everyone who's been on fantasy Twitter has seen people taking shots at other people like, oh, I told you Derrick Henry was worth an early first round pick, even though he wasn't a PPR monster. And you know what? I didn't think he was going to be as dominant as he had been, up until this point. But good Lord, just a fantastic player. He went down. Adrian Peterson all of a sudden is being called up. What do we make it? What do we make of that? Waivers just cleared. Obviously, we're going in. This is Wednesday for most of your leagues. Did any of you go out and get a backup running back for the Tennessee Titans, or successfully acquire, I should say?
I'm going to refrain from this because I have a specific flex off against one Jeremy McNichols, he who was recovering from an ankle injury from a couple weeks back. But, it's probably nothing big. It's just an ankle. You just have to use it every time you touch the field. But no, I will refrain from mentioning anything positive towards that.
Right.
Let the others go ahead.
So I got Adrian Peterson. I didn't even have to put in a claim for Adrian Peterson. I saw that he was available, and I had David Johnson on my roster and on my bench, and I'm like, yeah, I'll make the swap. I mean, what am I really giving up here? Tyler, did you have any interest in acquiring any of these backups for Tennessee, or were you okay with letting other people overspend?
People certainly did overspend. I saw someone in a dynasty league blow all $100 of their fab on Adrian Peterson and then immediately put him on the trade block.
Wow.
Yes, that was
bold
impressive.
Strategy. Yeah.
But I guess who else are you going to spend it on?
I guess
Jeremy McNichols, I liked him. I tried to get him where I could. I wasn't going to blow my budget on him, but I think he will be a productive player rest of the season, even if it's as a high-end RB3.
So you're saying he's not worth spending anything on in fab. Got it. You say he is worthless. Paraphrasing, right?
Yeah.
Worthless or valueless?
Yeah.
Valueless.
Yeah, you're just helping your case there, Tyler, in your first flex. Anyhow, we'll get to that later. Jameis Winston, ACL. God, I watched that game live. That was tough to see. What I did think it was really cool after the game was over and the coaches were meeting midfield, the very first thing Bruce Arians said to Sean Payton was, "How's Jameis?" And then you saw, Peyton Say is saying, and Bruce Arians, said, "Oh shit," or whatever whatever he says. He said the F word probably.
Probably.
He's gone. You weren't probably counting on Jameis Winston from a fantasy standpoint week in, week out as your starting quarterback, but still, it sucks. You see somebody get hurt, regardless of who it is. You feel bad for the situation, but the questions are popping up again. Taysom Hill. I actually was able to grab him off of waivers in a few competitive leagues I'm in. And even a non-super flex, I'm just really excited about the upside if he comes back relatively soon. He's actually the highest projected quarterback for the Saints in most platforms. How are we feeling about that, Nate? And when I say that, let's also talk about the Saints news today that Michael Thomas has basically written himself off for the second year in a row.
Yeah.
So no Michael Thomas. You have Taysom Hill coming back. During the offseason, everyone was talking about, well, Taysom Hill was the quarterback. Alvin Kamara wasn't really performing well. Well, now is that going to happen this year? And we didn't have to answer that question because Jameis Winston won the starting job. Well, guess what? We got to answer that question now. What does Taysom Hill do for you from a fantasy standpoint, as well as for Kamara?
I picked him up in our 4 championship, and I'm plugging him in this week against a team that's pretty susceptible to rushing quarterbacks. And that's kind of difficult to assume that he's going to have goal line carries. But even if you look last year, and again, it's not the exact same scenario. We don't have the same pieces in place. We don't have, with concern of with no Andrus Peat, that's going to be the one area. And Brian, we'll get to the offensive line. I love the fact that you even built me in a little offensive line session, which I'll get to. But Andrus Peat is out, and so that does hurt protecting his blind side. But look back at last year. I mean, he had 4 games where he started, and he was a QB6 in that time. 2 of those games played Atlanta, so he gets. I mean, granted, again, different Atlanta team, different offense, but if there's correlation whatsoever, he had he averaged 23.5 points per game against Atlanta in the 2 that he faced. So there's upside. The talk about Kamara is that a rushing quarterback limits the ceiling of a running back because instead of dumping off, they have a tendency to run themselves. I don't know if that's the exact same with Taysom. He's not a rush first quarterback, even though he can. I think that his are more design runs more so than just progressional reads and then scramble. But I mean, I think that it probably limits a little bit in terms of what his reception upside would be with someone that, depending upon how they can move the chains. They have to possess the ball, and the more times they can get first downs, the better chance it is. And that's the only concern I have is if the offense stagnates just a little bit. But Atlanta's a good first test. They're pretty easy to do everything against.
Pretty much. Let's go now to Aaron Rodgers, and he is on the COVID list. Aaron Rodgers, who said back in the summer, "I'm immunized against COVID-19." That does not mean the same thing as vaccinated against COVID-19. And apparently there are rules, to paraphrase the dude, or what is it? Not the dude, but John Goodman's character in The Big Lebowski. There are rules. I won't say the first part of that quote, but there are rules here in the NFL when it comes to COVID-19, like having to get tested regularly, wear masks, do everything basically like everyone had to do last year in the NFL. And he hasn't been doing that. He's been traveling with the plane. There's a lot of talk that maybe he hasn't been following all the rules. Apparently this is news to Green Bay. This is kind of concerning. Devonta Adams, we don't know if it's his status going into this week. He was on the COVID list last week, didn't play. Just from and I know this is a fantasy show, but just from a football fan perspective, Tyler, does this piss you off a little bit? Is this just one of those things where, let's face it, chances are he's probably going to get a slap on the wrist of that just because of history showing us that. But this could be a grand opportunity for the NFL to say, hey, you know what? We have rules here, and if you're not going to follow them, I don't care who you are. The consequences here.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks as a football fan. You always want to see Aaron Rodgers on the field. I mean, looking at that little clip now where he says, "I'm immunized," pro move on his part. I mean, bravo, Aaron Rodgers. He is just the king of backhanded words. But yeah, it sucks. But fantasy wise, I mean, I don't think it changes much who you're playing, it certainly changes your expectations for them. You're still playing Devontae Adams if he's healthy. You're not sitting him. You're not playing any other receivers. You're not playing any tight ends, especially now that Robert Tonyan went down. You're playing Aaron Jones, and this might even increase A.J. Dillon a little bit. I mean, A.J. Dillon's seen over the last 5 weeks, the trend's been continuing. He's seen 12 touches per week or 12 opportunities per week. And there's no reason why that might not go up if they have to lean on the run a little bit more, or if they have to include him in the passing game a little bit more, because we know there's no one else on that team that can catch the ball outside of Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, really.
So here's a question for everybody. All right. Going against Kansas City. Is this the Sunday night game? Green Bay and Kansas City, is that correct? Or is this just like a during the day game?
I think a 425 game, I think.
425 game? Okay.
Yeah.
What if by the time the Sunday night football game kicks off on Sunday, everyone's talking about Jordan Love? Oh my God, Jordan Love just tore it up. Do we have a situation in Green Bay where it's like,
No.
Okay.
No,
That's all you needed to say. No. All right. Going to Arizona, Kyler Murray. He had an ankle injury last week. All reports are saying he's good to go against San Francisco. Didn't have the greatest showing against the 49ers back in week 5 with only 11.6 fantasy points. But history has shown that he can play pretty well. He will not have A.J. Green, however, with him, as he is in the COVID protocol also. DeAndre Hopkins, we talked about him last week a little bit as far as what our expectations are for him going forward. And is he necessarily a must start? And it's like, of course, you're not going to sit DeAndre Hopkins. Well, let me tell you, each week goes by, and I'm a little bit more concerned. Health is obviously becoming an issue with him. Yardage totals are becoming an issue. Yes, he looks spectacular making touchdown catches, but you kind of need the other stuff too to really warrant a lot of heralded praise. Obviously, you're not worried about Kyler. His rushing upside is there if his ankle's good to go. But I'll just ask the question again. Is DeAndre Hopkins must-start material this season? Brian, let's start with you.
It's a good question. He's got a nagging hamstring. He has an offense where there are more choices, and they're using more choices this year. His target share has gone down, although he has a high TD rate. I think if you have him on your team, chances are you don't have too many better options. So I think you're running him out there every week and hoping for the best,
That's a good call. And we got Malcolm Merriweather on Facebook. I know both situations are ugly, but who do you guys see as the running back to roll with in Baltimore and in Houston? He's desperate for a running back. Also, Nyheim Hines and Ty Johnson are available this week. Man,
scraping the bottom of the barrel here, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Is Carlos Hyde not available? I mean, maybe not, since he didn't mention him.
He's in Jacksonville.
I know, but I'm using Carlos Hyde as an example.
Oh,
as a person on the waiver wire that might be available that I would choose over all of those, with the concern of James Robinson with that heel injury, personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't go after Hines or Johnson. I think, Nate, you hit it right on the head if he's not available. Malcolm just said. Okay. I want to say Texans because of the PPR upside, especially David Johnson, even though he didn't do squat. I think he had 0.8 points last week in half PPR score. Yeah. Take that for what it's worth. Ravens backfield, like, are we talking Latavius Murray? Like, who's in the Ravens backfield that you have? Man, God, you're right. These both situations are ugly.
Here's one thing, too, though, to keep in mind is that supposedly, and this is, again, maybe just speak and talk, is that the Texans were trying to move Philip Lindsay at the trade deadline, and no one was biting. Does that mean that they are ready to move on from Philip Lindsay, that he doesn't seem to be involved in their backfield plans going forward? And that might mean, again, here we talk about more David Johnson potential. Is Rex Burkhead going to see more play now? I mean, that's the question. And I think that, friend of the show and old family member, Aaron Paggs would say, if you have 5 running backs, you don't have one. And I think
Right.
maybe that's the best thing to say is just probably avoid it all. Maybe I didn't have a choice.
I'd also say, and Tyler, you wrote about him in the four-eyed waiver wire targets on offense. I mean, if Mark Ingram is somehow still on there, he looked pretty damn good his first game back. Being back with the Saints for 3 days, and he could be somebody who could potentially be a buy low candidate in your leagues. So I would target him if possible. I wouldn't give up too much for him, like I said. But anyway, going back to your question, I guess David Johnson, but I feel sorry for you because that sucks. So, let's keep going. Hello, Mike White put up 400 yards passing, not since Cam Newton as a first-time performance has a quarterback done that. And Derek Gore. Let's start with Derek Gore. He looked good, Nate, on Monday Night. He looked. I know Darrell Williams had 100 yards rushing, but whatever. Like Gore looked the part of a good running back. What are you hearing out of Kansas City? Is he and Darrell Williams still going to be like a 1-2 punch type of thing, or is it, hey, he had a great game, but let's not overblow the situation there?
Probably the latter of the two, but honestly, there's not been much talk. Especially, if anything, it's more. I think people are concerned to say anything because the whole with CEH eligible to come off the IR this week, that you're just going to muddy these waters even more. So Gore did look great. He had some, like you could see the explosion. You could see his ability to get to that second level. But I still think that, especially in this particular matchup, maybe not as much. Going into this matchup against Green Bay, you thought there would be a potential shootout. But Kansas City has done enough to tell us that we have no clue what to expect from their offense or their defense going forward. I think it lowers the ceiling of Darrell Williams enough because, you see what you have with Gore. But right. I think they both eat into each other's production, unfortunately, which CEH owners going forward, when he gets back, now it's even it's just super muddy.
We talk about Mike White. Forget about Mike White. Let's talk about Michael Carter. He is must flex for me going forward. Just look at the usage ever since they came off the bye last week. I think he was like the RB1 or RB2, I think, in half PPR scoring. Like this guy's the real deal. I don't care if he looks like a 12-year-old or 12th grader. He's doing it. He can kick my ass. He can kick a lot of football players' asses. He can play with the best of them. He's love him. Let's go to OBJ drama in Cleveland. I don't know if you heard this, but Odell Beckham Jr. seems to have drama follow him wherever he goes. So he's no longer a part of the team, or is he? I don't know. Tyler, you're the Browns fan. What to make of this Odell Beckham situation?
Well, the first thing I'd say is no longer part of the team. That report from Mike Silver, I don't really buy it. He's been doing sensationalized stuff for years, and I don't believe Kevin Stefanski is going to stand in front of that entire roster and his coaching staff and say, after one day, Odell Beckham Jr. is no longer part of this team. They might not play. He might not play at all. He might not play the rest of the year. We'll see. I don't see Andrew Berry as the kind of guy who's just going to knee-jerk react and just release a guy because he had his dad send some bad video out of him not getting the ball when he's open. I think they'd rather see if they can get something for him this offseason, because after this year, I don't believe his deal is guaranteed at all. But the one thing I will say about the Browns is I think they owe it to themselves to see if Baker's stats without Odell are real. I don't know if you guys have seen these at all, but just as a little preview, well, not a preview of it, just what it is. Baker's played nearly a season and a half or 2 seasons without Odell and with Odell. And here is stats without Odell. He's played 25 games. He's completed 64.4% of his passes. He's at 7.8 yards per attempt. He's at 4.7 touchdown rate, 2.1% interception rate. He's at a 2.3 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, and he's at 95.5 passer rating. Wow. With Odell, he's played 28 games. He's completed 60.7% of his passes for 7.2 yards per attempt. Still a 4.7% touchdown rate, but a 3.3% interception rate, a 1.4 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, and an 84.8% passer rating.
How about that?
He has shown that he is a better player without Odell Beckham Jr. on the field. And I think with Baker's rookie contract expiring, I still don't know if they're going to give him an extension after this year. I think they owe it to themselves to see if that's real.
Good call. Next, let's get into the unfortunate situation for the victims and the victims' families in Las Vegas, with Henry Ruggs going 156 miles an hour while drunk and crashing into a car. The loss of life there. It goes without saying that we all we feel bad, and we send our prayers and thoughts to the families involved. What a way to just fuck up your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I know normally curse a lot on the show, but I could not have thought about doing that. And I have an imaginative mind. I could have thought about creative thing. I would never have thought hey, dude, you got it all going on right here, and you decided to do it in that fashion. Obviously the Raiders got rid of him. He's probably looking at 2 to 20 years in jail. I hope it's on the latter end. Yeah. I don't think he deserves any more attention than we're giving him right now. So
right, exactly.
Yep. Let's go to now. Let's finish off our news and such with Nate Markham's report from the trenches. What do you got for us, Nate?
That's great. My favorite. Each week, if you're new to the segment, I like to have a little pee on in your Cheerios parade and talk about all the injuries across the offensive line that could have an effect on your teams. Most importantly, though, it's one area that I think we do have a tendency to overlook. And when we temper our expectations or increase the value of a player, it's easy to forget sometimes and see these guys that actually create these running lanes or protect the quarterback's blind side. We'll start in Buffalo. 2 decently productive offensive linemen. You have John Feliciano at guard, who could miss, as well as Spencer Brown. Both 2 pretty impactful with Buffalo. Obviously, we know that the running game there is, I don't know what the right word is, wonky at best, but
the Josh Allen game.
You hope that interior line, really more so with Feliciano, he's going to probably miss. Spencer Brown at tackle, I think he'll play, but something just to keep an eye on. Cincinnati, Trey Hopkins at center didn't practice. Centers, obviously, I like to always pay closer attention to sometimes than the guards, just because they control. They're the play callers on the offense. They call out alignments on the defense. They call out, Mikes, Sams, and ultimately has an effect, especially on a young quarterback like Joe Burrow. Pretty important. In Cleveland, Jack Conklin did try to play last week. Unfortunately, injured his elbow, and he's out now for, I don't know if it's the rest of the season, if it's pretty close to that, but it's obviously a big loss to their rushing game. Conklin being the right tackle is one of the best rushing tackles, or at least run blocking tackles in the league. Dallas, Tyron Smith didn't practice with an ankle today, but that's going to be progressing as the week goes on. Obviously, we'd like to see Dak in his first game back have some protection from his blind side. In Denver, Garrett Bowles is out. Garrett Bowles is the left tackle there, protecting Teddy Bridgewater, which now with this particular matchup, as I mentioned in our four-eyed preview or the IDP waiver wire, go read that. Instead of me telling you what it is, go read it and find out for yourself.
At fantasyandframes.com.
Yeah, fantasyandframes.com. Exactly. Greedy bastards. Go do it yourself. Real quick, let's go around. What else? Quentin Nelson got a limited practice in for the Colts, which is huge. Jacksonville, Ben Barch is missed with an illness. Andres Peters, I touched on, for New Orleans, is out. And with the Jets, George Fant did practice limited today. Trent Williams missed practice with an ankle injury. And for Arizona Cardinals fans, a breath of good news, going forward, is Rodney Hudson is available to come off of the IR this week, which would be huge for that offense going forward. And that is your In the Trenches report for week 9.
All right.
Question for you, Nate, on that follow-up. How do you feel about the Cowboys moving La'el Collins inside to play Terrence Steele?
Actually, I really like him because his biggest attribute has always been his speed and his footwork. And at guard, that when you can have, especially, and I don't know what their percentage of trap plays or pulling plays is. I don't have that in front of me, and that's something to take into account, because when you can have those misdirections and the pulls and the traps, and you get that guard coming across, you imagine what's low count 6'7", something like that. You imagine him coming across, and you're that defensive end, and so what happens is when you pull, typically the tackle inline blocks, and then the outside backer or the edge rusher, depending upon who's free, usually gets a free look at the running back, and their eyes light up, and then they have to look out the corner of their eye, and they see 6'7" linemen coming down and crushing him. It's the highlight, I think, of most guards run blocking, is that 57 trap or any of those plays. At least I think it would be.
I think this is a great segment to keep on the show going forward, because I don't think anybody has talked as passionately when it comes to offensive linemen in fantasy shows than you. This is fantastic. IDP guru over here, Nate Markham, and offensive lineman
God, I have
over
the
here.
shittiest niches in the world.
Hollywood Titan, what's going on, buddy?
Hey,
speaking of offensive linemen, you were mentioning centers and how important they are. I was on Instagram the other day, and I found this. It's this old video where Peyton Manning just
Jeff Saturday.
But Jeff Saturday was like fighting back. He's like, "Run the goddamn ball! Run the I'm going to run the ball. I'm going to run the ball. You just play." I think like it's
great.
And the fact that Peyton Manning and him are having this debate, not like Peyton Manning saying, "Shut your mouth and do what I say." Like, that just tells you the importance that if a Hall of Famer like Peyton Manning can listen to like a center.
Who's a Hall of Famer too, as well.
Yeah, sure, but he understands the value of what the center can bring. That should tell you all you need to know about the center position. And with that, let's get into some of our prime matchups for the week, where we basically go on offense, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. We tell you one minimum player if you want. If you want to go into more, you can go into more. That we think really have a good opportunity to put up a decent fantasy performance for you this week. So let's start with Tyler at the quarterback position. Who do you got for us?
I went a little bit deeper. I tried to stay away from some of the top guys, but I'm going to go with Tua Tagovailoa. Freshly off of the trade rumors and the Dolphins trying to mess him up real good. He's had 3 good weeks in a row. I think it was week 7 in Atlanta. He had a great week, and they're playing the Houston Texans. Houston Texans give up the 6th most points to the quarterback position. I actually think that might actually get worse because Davis Mills might not be the starting quarterback anymore. You can point to Davis Mills' numbers all you want. It's all garbage time. Tyrod Taylor had this team playing better when he was their starting quarterback, and hopefully he comes back this week, which means more points on the Texans' end and more points that'll be necessary on the Dolphins' end. So I like Tua. He can run the ball a little bit, maybe get it in the end zone with his legs and his arm.
Very nice. Brian, for the running back position, who do you got?
Yeah, there's a few kind of obvious ones that, but like if you have them, you're playing them anyway, like Aaron Jones and Jonathan Taylor and Dalvin Cook all have good matchups based on who they're going against. I also want to point out Boston Scott of the Eagles goes against the Chargers, who have not been good against the run. They're 30th in fantasy points against running backs. The coaches showed they want to use Scott and only gave Gainwell touches in garbage time. With that coaching staff, who knows? They could flip it around the following week. But he's somebody who you might have had to plug into a flex with injuries and buys. And also Josh Jacobs going against the Giants, and a chance for a positive game script against the 24th ranked team against fantasy running backs.
Very nice. I'll give you a wide receiver. And this is, as opposed to Tyler, somebody that you probably should be playing week in and week out. I was lucky enough that I haven't had to use him. Translation, he's been coming off my bench. Marquise Brown versus Minnesota. Minnesota normally is pretty good in coverage, but against the Cowboys with Cooper Rush as their quarterback, he was able to facilitate 2 wide receivers having over 100 yards receiving, and the other wide receiver who had a big boom play as opposed to a bust play. Cedric Wilson had an 84-yard bomb thrown to him. And now you have Marquise Brown, who is not the target monster like Mark Andrews is in that offense, but he's second, and he's doing really well. In the past 4 games, he's had 4 games this season of 80 yards or more, which is great because in previous seasons, he's been that touchdown guy that's gotten him the fantasy notoriety. The receptions had been there, but the yardage had not been. And so you're really counting on a touchdown to kind of save his fantasy value. Well, now you're seeing the yardage starting to creep up there. A lot more plays. The past 4 games played in weeks 4 through 8, he's the wide receiver 7 with 17 fantasy points per game and half PPR scoring. And just going back to those 4 games where he's had 80 yards or more in terms of fantasy point production, 20.3 points, 17 points, 29 points, 16.5 points. I think it goes without saying that you would have to have like somebody really, really, really good to not be starting Marquise Brown this week. So start him against the Vikings. And then we got Nate with tight ends.
Before Tyler and I battle to the death in our flex off, we're going to join teams. We're going to go hand in hand and walk through the Miami Dolphins passing game, where Tua is going to look heavy and early and often to Mike Gesicki, who over the last 3 weeks is the tight end 1 in all scoring formats. Maybe he's not number 1 in some weird random format I don't know. Maybe the Raz format, where it's the opposite. The worst tight ends are ranked number 1. He's number 1 in all of them.
Don't talk about Razzball right now. My heart can't take it right now.
It's okay. We'll get to that at some point. 97.8% route participation. Houston allows 5th most points to opposing tight ends. They allow the 3rd most targets, or he is 3rd in targets amongst tight ends, and he's 3rd in air yards. If we look at what they've done now, granted, having Devontae Parker back probably does limit some of that super ceiling, but I do like what we've seen out of Gesicki. He kind of has given us what we expected last year out of Gesicki. At least you did, Jorge. You loved Mike Gesicki going into last year, and all he did was crush your heart. So I still hate him for that. Kind of like the scoring decks that I'm like, I don't like that bitch. She was stupid, mean. But then you're back together with her, so I have to be nice to her and be like, I always liked you. You're cool. So Mike Gesicki, you're still cool with me, but I still kill you.
I love that you stick up for me. I appreciate that. That makes me feel so loved. I love it.
Exactly.
I love it. All right. Well, let's get into like it's a segment that you all have come to love. We pit analysts against analysts. We defend a player that we think should be given flex consideration for your fantasy rosters each week. So we bring you our flex off segment. Flex off. I know I gotta get a drop. I know I'm horrible.
That's terrible.
We keep talking. That's like the running gag, like Jonathan has the Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods question every week. Mine is going to be like, I'm going to get a drop for our segments eventually. So anywho, with that said, let's get into our first matchup. Nate, you're taking ironically, this is funny. You're in the corner of AJ Dillon going against your Kansas City Chiefs.
It's not. Is it ironic? Is it ironic, really? You think that he put that on me? Yeah. Real coincidental.
Yeah. Good job, Brian. And then, of course, Tyler, you're going to be in the corner of Jeremy McNichols for the Titans going against the Los Angeles Rams. Let's start with you, Tyler. Why should you be flexing Jeremy McNichols this week?
All right. Well, let me first start by saying I don't need to be putting words in anyone's mouth or trying to lead the jury like Nate has already started to do. I am confident in my preparation. And, AJ Dillon, have fun with that 3.5 yards per carry without Aaron Rodgers. Anyway, Titans, they are right now, they're leading the league in rush attempts. They have the most rush attempts per game, 32.5 per game. I think we all know why. It is Derrick Henry. So I would expect them to regress to above average in attempts, maybe dropping to around 26 per game. So everyone knows what that means, more pass attempts for Ryan Tannehill. And the specialty of Jeremy McNichols is pass catching. He's shown himself to be a very capable pass catching back. He's averaged 9.7 yards per reception on the year so far. And extremely small sample size, but he's averaged 5.4 yards per attempt on the ground. I would say he's going to see several more attempts on the ground right now. We expect Adrian Peterson to be elevated to the active roster. The only other guy on the active roster right now is Kari Blasingame. I don't believe he's much of a threat to take a lot of work away from Jeremy McNichols. Adrian Peterson, I'm sure, is in fantastic dude at the gym shape, but game shape, I'm not sure if he's going to have his legs quite under him yet.
Fantastic dude at the gym shape. That's all. Yeah, that's awesome.
Just like Tim Tebow was in the offseason.
Jeez.
Okay, let's keep. That's
Trent
you're getting points for
Richardson- yeah,
you're
Trent
getting points
Richardson
for
was good in
humor.
the
I'm
gym,
liking
too.
this. I'm liking this.
So I mean, I'm expecting Jeremy McNichols to see 15 to 20 opportunities in this game. I mean, he's going to get a lot of run, especially with Adrian Peterson not being quite in game shape yet. I would expect that to take a couple of weeks. Half of those are going to be receptions, and I think with Jalen Ramsey funneling a lot of the targets toward the middle of the field and the Titans not really having a viable tight end, Anthony Ferkser, you can say what you want about him. He hasn't been very successful. I expect McNichols to see a lot of those
Did you
targets.
say McNuggets? Is that like a Freudian slip that you're hungry for?
I'm
McDonald's?
hungry, man. I haven't eaten yet. I'm waiting until we're done here to go get some dinner. So, yes, McNuggets, Jeremy McNuggets. I expect to see him dipped in some sweet and sour sauce and get in that end zone.
Isn't that the best dipping sauce there? Like normally I would go honey mustard, but sweet and sour is kind of where it's at.
For McDonald's, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anyhow, that's going to be our new sponsor. Forget Dynasty Pandemic. McDonald's.
You get McDonald's as a sponsor?
Yeah, right. That would
Yeah,
be.
sure.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. All right,
Ball
Nate.
shavers to
What?
nuggets.
Yeah.
From nugget shavers to nuggets.
Exactly.
I'm down.
Screw you, Manscaped. No, I'm just kidding. Well, maybe I am. We'll see. Anyhow, AJ Dillon.
AJ Dillon. Contrary to Jeremy McNichols, who we call chicken nugget legs in the fantasy community, at least I do, we go to Quadzilla in Green Bay, where let's be honest, you're this small sample size of the 3.8 without Aaron Rodgers. Jeremy McNichols is averaging 0 yards per carry against the Rams for his career. So suck on that one. What do you think? 0. He's never gotten a yard. So
that one.
So, that being said, I will not bring up just BS stats. The realistic fact of the matter is wow, I said fact a lot. AJ Dillon, let's look at game script here. Like you kind of said, should be a heavy passing game in against the Titans with the Rams and their pass rush. There's no doubt about that. It's hard to throw the ball when you're on the ground, which is going to be difficult. At the same time, AJ Dillon's involvement when I'm setting a floor for myself, and also, by the way, you wanted to attack my fact checking statistics. If you checked a little bit, Kari Blasingame missed practice and probably won't play on Sunday. And if that didn't help you already, it does now, because now there's even less targets to go around and less people to touch the ball. Congratulations, Tyler. I just gave you a little extra piece of knowledge to add on there. Jorge, remember that. I'm just helping Tyler's case. So it's
Gotta
not
go
full
get
in.
Kari
It's
Blasingame out of my lineups.
Exactly. But the good news is, bad news, however it is for me, is that the Chiefs have not been exactly good against opposing teams' running backs. We have allowed the eighth, I say we, I'm on the team, the eighth most rushing yards, the fourth most yards per carry, the third most rushing touchdowns. And without Jordan Love in this game, let's be honest, it's probably going to lean a heavy rush attack. The Jordan Love, Devontae Adams connection that may not be there if Devontae Adams has to miss time is probably the only safe play they have. No Robert Tonyan. They have to worry about constantly being in the attack mode. I hope, I mean, here's the thing. Kansas City's offense hasn't exactly been this haven of fantasy gold. And so what can happen is that there's a chance that Green Bay actually stifles the Chiefs, and then they want to turn it into a ground game. And if that's the case, Matt LaFleur looks to, leave it there. They want to keep the ball out of Mahomes' hand. What's the best way to do that? Obviously, keep the running game. And so, despite this backup role, let's forget that he's a backup in this battle of starter versus backup. But he is.
He's a backup, right, Jorge?
I'm reserving judgment until after Nate.
I apologize. Go ahead.
Good. Even as a backup, he's 32nd in attempts. He's 20th in yards per attempt among running backs with 50-plus attempts on the season. He has 10 receptions for 90 yards. So obviously when he gets the ball in his hands, he is dynamic, and there's nobody on the Chiefs, honestly, they're going to really slow him down. I say this and it hurts my belly every time I talk about these statistics, but they're true. And unfortunately, with him with the ball in his hand, he's dynamic. You know, like you mentioned when you talked about the past couple weeks, we're starting to see a trend where Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are starting to see pretty 50-50 touches. Last week, he out-touched and outproduced Aaron Jones for the first time, and that was a lot to do with the fact that Devontae Adams being out, no Robert Tonyan. They split Aaron Jones out wide quite a bit more last week than they have in previous weeks. He had 3 snaps in line. He had 4 in the slot. He had 3 out wide. And the only other 2 weeks that he produced something like that really was weeks 3 and 4. And A.J. Dillon had good weeks, at least in week 4 primarily. He had 15 for 81 with a 5.4 yards per carry. Hasn't gotten in the end zone yet. So as we know with anything, touchdowns are fickle. But I'd look to see A.J. Dillon get in there, not with his little chicken nugget legs, but those big quadzilla pumping through for a score and 10-plus touches.
Okay. So this is a great situation. Part of me wonders if with Jordan Love at quarterback, whether or not there's going to be a lot more design runs for him to kind of take the pressure off, especially if you don't have a Devontae Adams and other reliable wide receivers or the chemistry with said wide receivers, and really utilize his athleticism to get away from Kansas City. And therefore, there's only so many rushing attempts you're going to have per game. And obviously you're going to showcase Aaron Jones as much as possible. So I don't know whether or not you're going to be able to get this plethora of, offensive weapons going against the Chiefs. But however, I do agree that if Kansas City, they've been in a rut lately. I can't really point my finger at one specific thing on offense.
Interceptions, turnovers, 18 of them.
Well, there you go. Thank you. I can point now. I can. So there you go.
Can.
But look, I want to go back to a couple of years ago when Patrick Mahomes was out. He had that dislocated kneecap thing going on, and I forget, was it Chad Henne was the quarterback going against Green Bay, and this was a competitive game, against an average defense. Well, Green Bay's defense has not been exactly great, especially in coverage. And you have now Patrick Mahomes back this year, and all their weapons are good to go. You're going against an offense that should be underperforming in Green Bay. I mean, with that being the narrative, I can see Green Bay wanting to keep it on the ground and just keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. I don't know how effective they're going to be at that, which is why I am not sold on A.J. Dillon so much this week. Jeremy McNichols. Here's why I am sold on Jeremy McNichols against the Jets. Okay, I know it's the Jets. In the receiving game, he had 12 targets, 8 receptions, 12 targets against a Jets team that they were, having to keep up with, and which is something I never thought I would say, that the Jets were so dominant that the Titans had to keep up with the Jets. Well, what do you think they're going to have to do against the Rams this week? I mean, they're going to probably have to keep up with the Rams in the receiving game. I know it's a 1-game sample, which doesn't mean diddly crap.
It does.
But,
it means
but I have to make a choice.
I have
to make a decision of what's more likely to happen. Green Bay keeping Kansas City off the field, or McNichols and the Titans playing from behind, just to keep pace with the Rams. And that is why I think I'm going to go with McNichols and Tyler this week.
Yes, I had a whole thing written up on McNichols.
Suck those chicken nuggets.
I know, he's so much better.
Jeremy McNuggets, I love it. Oh,
Jeremy, and actually that week, where he had 12 targets, AJ Brown was out, Julio was out, and Ferkser, I believe, got hurt or missed significant snaps. So
I don't know if Julio is supposed to come back this week or not.
I don't think so.
But it was good to see AJ Brown finally go off last week. Waiting for that for a long time. All right, so I'm not entirely thrilled about this next matchup, so thank you very much, Brian. But you know what? I'm going to do my darndest, okay?
Okay.
We're going to have the wide receiver position. I am going to defend Tyler Boyd. I'm going to defend Tyler Boyd against you, Brian, against Devontae Parker. And I feel like this is like Akeem Olajuwon versus, somebody short. But anyhow, let's see what happens here. Let's start with you, Devontae Parker.
Okay, I'll keep it short and sweet. I know we're kind of up against IDP
No, we're
here.
good. We're good. We're good. We're
Okay.
good. We're good.
So Devontae Parker's targets in the games he's played this year: 7, 9, 7, 9, and 11. Came back from an injury to play week 8. 11 targets, 8 catches for 85 yards against a pretty good Buffalo defense. He ate into the usage of two guys I love, Gesicki and Waddle. And he's going up against Houston, who is not good and ranked 21st against receivers. I don't see much of a ground game in Miami. So I think that, even if it's a positive game script, I think Tua will still be throwing the ball. So I expect Parker to have a pretty good week. Boyd is another guy I like. I thought he would be a reliable sort of target hog for a young quarterback. But when all 3 receivers have been healthy, he's always been third in targets. I also have a feeling that it's going to be sort of a low-scoring game where each team is trying to establish the run with Mixon and Chubb. So I apparently think this is a closer call than Jorge does, but give me Parker by a little.
All right, Tyler Boyd. Look, he's coming off of a big game versus the Jets, where they had to keep pace with the Jets again. Things I never thought I would say. With 17.2 fantasy points, going against Cleveland and Pittsburgh last week. The Browns kind of kept the Steelers in check, except for one position at wide receiver, which was a slot cornerback, which was Deontay Johnson, who got you, albeit 12.3 fantasy points. Look, you make a very good argument for. It's Chase, it's Higgins. I think the past 3 weeks, like these guys have been in the top 20 in fantasy point production, and Tyler Boyd has been low. But we're looking at deficiency. We're looking at slot corner coverage. You got like a Troy Hill, who is the worst rated coverage guy in man situations. I'm not saying Tyler Boyd's going to set the world on fire, but I am going to say that he is going to be serviceable enough for you in these like bye weeks where you might have no other choice. But to insert a Tyler Boyd, I do not think you're going to be disappointed, as long as you're tempering expectations. So that was my confident defense of Tyler Boyd as a flex person this week. Tyler.
Man, you guys were just really staunch on how you felt about them. That was really convincing on both sides. I like them both this week. I like Devontae Parker's target volume. I like Tyler Boyd's involvement. He had a couple down weeks, but and people are really starting to key on Jamar Chase, which has given Tyler Boyd a little bit more of an opportunity. As a Browns fan, I know what happens when the Bengals and Browns play each other, and it is very high-scoring games. Both times they played each other in 2020, I believe they either surpassed or came damn near 70 points scored in both of those games. And you mentioned Troy Hill. I don't think the Browns know how to defend anyone right now. I don't think Joe Woods knows how to draw up a decent defense. It's drop 7 in coverage and let Myles Garrett try to finish the play for you. I think Burrow's going to go off this week. Like you said, temper your expectations. I don't see 200 yards and 2 touchdowns for Tyler Boyd, but I think he's a really solid play this week. I'm going to go with Jorge and Boyd.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to take out my phone and go to Venmo and send you a little bit something your way. Thank you very much.
I already requested $5.
Okay. Just making sure.
Hey, that's our drop money. Bitch. That's why we ain't got no drop. We got your shit sound effects. You keep paying off judges.
Well, you got to do what you got to. Anywho, all right, let's go to our next matchup here. We got at the running back. It's a flex position, obviously. Tony Pollard, Nate, going against the Denver Broncos this week.
Backup running back against.
Yeah, the backup running back versus. I see what you're doing there. Yeah, I got you.
I love it. I love it though. It's great.
I don't hate Tony Pollard, to be honest.
I
think he's a very explosive running back.
I like doing research and I like formulating, I'd say, scenarios. So this is perfect. I really enjoyed these, honestly. You want to answer?
I'm going against
my
Rashad
question?
Bateman. I'm Rashad Bateman. Oh, sorry, my bad. Thank you for staying on top of that. Michael Chapp, sorry about that. My team is Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Kyle Pitts, Hollywood Brown with Dalvin and Zach Moss / Gaskins as my RB2. Would you package Diggs and Gaskin for a good RB2? And if so, who? Wow, this is good. I like this. Diggs and Gaskin for a good RB2. Good RB2. That is a great question. So Gaskin, I don't think helps your cause this just this season, just in general. And the not obsessive fantasy manager might look at Stephon Diggs and say, well, he's been severely underperforming that compared to what he did last year in Buffalo. Just with the naked eye. So that could hamper a great RB2. Good RB2.
The hardest thing about a question like this in general is at this point in the season, you need to really identify the team if they're in contention that is lacking at the receiver position and see if they have that excess running back. If it's a team that's out of it, then granted that you don't want collusion or anything. But running back's so scarce right now.
I immediately my thought goes, you could probably pull off a Damian Harris with the Diggs upside. I think, to be honest with you, he could be a good RB. They could possibly get there.
I'm not trading.
You're not trading
Diggs for Harris. No, I trust. I think Moss has the ceiling upside of an RB2 is not as much as Damian Harris, but Damian Harris, their game script has to kind of be in that favor to some extent. I know the Chargers were a weird situation, but the Chargers, like we were saying, they allow everybody to run. They'll give up the rushing, Staley will, and just say, you can't keep up with our offense. You run the ball and we'll beat you 9 times out of 10.
All right, what about Khalil Herbert for Chicago? Not a worthy investment because you worry about David Montgomery coming back short term, long term.
Yeah, I feel like I'd rather have Gaskin than Khalil Herbert with a healthy David Montgomery. At least Gaskin has the ability to get 8-9 targets in a week. I guess to answer this question,
I don't know if I'd do anything, to be honest.
Yeah, I would hold Diggs. You mentioned he's been underperforming. Yeah, okay. Josh Allen hasn't.
Right.
Diggs could be the wide receiver 1 over the second half of the year. There's nothing stopping him. If you really want to trade someone, I would try to trade Hollywood.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, because you know why? Because Hollywood's not the best wide receiver on his team anymore.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you. I like that.
Just because you're the best receiver on the 20. You know what? I won't go any further.
Yeah,
you're right. I think Hollywood has
who's my judge? Not Tyler. Damn it. Maybe I should have swapped judges. Anyhow, Rashad Bateman is who I'm taking to defend this week against the Vikings. All right, Nate. Tony Pollard. Why is he so good against Denver?
Well, Tony Pollard's good against everybody. But Denver specifically, if you look at what Denver's a 24th ranked rush defense in EPA. So, already you're up against not even a formidable, a pretty loose rushing attack. And that's typically with Von Miller. Now we don't have Von Miller. So, the gaps should be even more. Granted, I know Von Miller's not directly related to their rushing defense, but he is. Let's not beat around the bush. The less chance that Denver has to get to Dak Prescott means the more times that Tony Pollard and Dak can stay on the field. And that's the key in this entire game. The Cowboys have to go into this game assuming that they can manage this game without Dak needed to do too much. That calf injury is not, something they want to – granted, it's not an arm, but I don't think they want to chuck the ball 40-plus times this week. I think they want to keep it on the ground, let Zeke and Tony Pollard do what they do best, and control the clock and control the game. Right now, Dallas is concerned with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb's health going into this game. 2 more reasons to keep the ball on the ground. Ground-centric capacity against Denver is the way that they're going to win this ball game, and probably win any way they want. But let's be honest, more likely they're going to run the ball. And look at Denver's offense again. We talked earlier about Grant Bowles being out. Grant Bowles being out, Randy Gregory and company is going to completely destroy Teddy Bridgewater, which is going to lead to turnovers. It's also going to lead to ball control again for Dallas. If we look at what Pollard's done, he only has 2 games when he has fewer than 10 rushing attempts. And that's sometimes in not exactly the most positive game scripts like he's going to have this week. He has 5.8 yards per attempt, which is 10th in the league. He's 4th in true yards per carry. He's 16th in evaded tackles per game. So he's an electric elite runner when he gets the opportunities. And like I said, with only 2 games with fewer than 10 rushing attempts, there's a good chance this game gets out of hand early. Dallas takes control, and they let Tony Pollard control that second half, where we might see 15-plus touches. And 15-plus touches turns into 100 yards and a score or 2 for Tony Pollard in this game. He's not, terrible in receiving upside as well. But I think this, like I said, I think that when we're comparing what we're going to get out of Tony Pollard versus Rashad Bateman is we want to compare floors as well as ceilings. I think the ceiling for Rashad Bateman is capped with Lamar Jackson-led offense. I think that they want to definitely control the rushing attack. We talked earlier about Minnesota allowing Cooper Rush to have this game. They focused on stopping the rushing game. Let's not get past the fact that they just, Cooper Rush didn't destroy them. Cooper Rush was given the opportunity to pass the ball at will, and they effectively chose the wrong dynamic because they didn't think Cooper Rush could beat them. Minnesota was wrong. And that Cameron Dantzler is a much better corner against Rashad Bateman when they line up than what I think that he's getting credit for. Their passing defense as a whole, they're 8th against the pass. They've allowed the 2nd fewest passing touchdowns. And with limited reception target upside for Rashad Bateman overall, we know this passing attack is not prolific. I mean, they need to get in the end zone for Rashad Bateman to really hit that ceiling play. And I don't see that happening this week against Minnesota. I see that being a ground game similar to Dallas. Give me Tony Pollard.
All right. So the past few weeks, weeks and 7, obviously the Baltimore was on the bye last week. You really saw Rashad Bateman start to close the gap on Marquise Brown. And, I'll ask a rhetorical question here. What, if I'm a quarterback, do I want to see my wide receiver do more often than not? In fact, I want to see them do this all the time. The answer, catch the ball. Rashad Bateman during that time is a catch percentage of 63.6%. Marquise Brown, 47.4. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that also Rashad Bateman has 11 targets on the season. 11 targets, not 11 targets on the season. 11 targets, week 6 and 7 for 7 receptions. Marquise Brown has 19 targets for 9 receptions. Here's the thing. So Brown is up by 8 targets on the season, or those 2 weeks than Bateman. But Hollywood Brown has 150 yards in that time frame. Bateman, 109. I mean, Bateman's really making more of his opportunity. And here's the important thing. You're seeing Lamar Jackson's passing volume go up. You're not really seeing a lot of good running back situation happening in Baltimore. And you would think that Lamar Jackson would be running the ball more, but his passing volume is what's really going up here, which is really impressive, which is why everyone's considering him as a potential MVP candidate. And when you look at his average depth of target, it's at 12 yards down the field. He's looking for receiving targets. And of course, Mark Andrews is in that wheelhouse. So is Rashad Bateman. He has an average depth of target of 10.5 yards. So let me get this right. You got a wide receiver who's more efficient, who catches the ball more, who's in his quarterback's wheelhouse when it comes to targeting and catching the ball down the field. And you have a situation against Minnesota, who, yes, very good point. They weren't expecting Cooper Rush to do that. But look, they almost gave up even the fact that they weren't expecting Cooper. I mean, to give up close to, to have 3 receivers close to over 100 yards receiving, that's bad. And if Hollywood Brown is going to be taking the top off of defenses, Bateman, I think the floor is there. I agree in normal weeks that the ceiling might be capped because of Hollywood Brown. I don't think that's the case this week. I think you're going to see Bateman have his best game of the season yet. So give me Rashad Bateman.
Okay, so the reason I set this one up is selfish because before Saquon went on the COVID list and I had to put Pollard in at running back, this was an actual flex off for my team
Damn it, we're
in my
helping
home
this.
redraft league.
That's genius.
So I wanted to see where this went, and you both made really great arguments. I'm big on Bateman. I like Pollard as a fairly underrated player. I do see the passing volume increasing in Baltimore. I don't know that the Vikings secondary is all that good, although they kind of did dare Cooper Rush to throw the ball, but at the same time, you dared him to do it, and then you let Cooper Rush destroy you. So, it's really tough one. I think if Dak plays, the running game is usually better with Dak. And I think they're going to try to limit Dak's exposure to re-injuring the calf. So by a smidge, give me Pollard.
That is that would be a tough one to put because I personally do like. I think Rashad Bateman's much better receiver than Hollywood, in my opinion. I think Mark Andrews is the area that I'm probably more concerned with if there was a ceiling being capped, which I should have talked about. I didn't, but shame on me. But I, squeaked it out anyway. So
Good win.
Yeah.
Can I throw out Lamar's passing attempt increase? Since we were referencing it, I was actually curious to see what it actually is.
Sure.
So rookie year, he was at 24.3 attempts per game. Sophomore year, 26.7 attempts per game. I believe that was his MVP season.
Mm-hmm.
The year after that, he was 25.1. This year, he's jumped all the way to 32.1 attempts per game. That is a huge increase.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, driven by their defense. Because their defense as a whole, if you look collectively now, they are, bottom 12, I think, in total offense allowed, and I think they've allowed the 11th most, and versus last year and the years prior, where they've been keeping teams in games, and they had a little bit more of a running game. You're right. This is a great point. Sometimes necessity breeds those passing attempts. It feels like they trust him a little bit more.
Yeah.
And
his completion percentage hasn't fallen off either,
which is shocking.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to our last flex off of the week. Tyler. Buffalo. Tyler, you're going to be in the corner of. I actually don't even know who the side end. Agnew, Jamal Agnew.
Wide receiver.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Wow. Well, this is good because this really means I'm really impartial in this situation, so there's no swaying me whatsoever. I do know this guy though, Hunter Renfrow. Brian, you're in his corner going against the Giants this week. All right, Jamal Agnew. Tyler, tell me about him.
This isn't very nice. I've been championing Hunter Renfrow all season. I think he was in my waiver wire article from week 1 until he went above 50%. Anyway. All right, so Jamal Agnew. He has been a big part of the Jaguars offense the past 3 weeks. Offense might be a loose term for what the Jaguars are right now, but DJ Chark went down in week 4. He went down early in week 4, but week 5 and beyond, when they were game planning without DJ Chark, Jamal Agnew has been a huge part of the offense. He hasn't seen a ton of snaps, but he's done a lot with them. He's seen 63, 59, and 72% respectively, averaging 65% of those snaps in those games. Last game was a 72%, so it's continuing to go up. In those games, he's seen 7, 6, and 12 targets for an average of 8.3 targets per game. Without context, 8.3 doesn't sound like a lot, but what I will say is that number is right behind Jacoby Myers, Antonio Brown, and Adam Thielen, and that number is right in front of T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Pittman. That's a lot of targets per game. He's averaged 10.2 yards per reception. So, wide receiver numbers, those are a little lower. He's doing it closer to the line of scrimmage because you got Laviska Shenault and Marvin Jones pulling a lot of coverage off of him. So he's getting a lot of opportunities. Him and you've seen it with Dan Arnold as well. They're opening up the middle of the field because offenses are saying, we're going to stop Marvin Jones. We're going to stop Laviska Shenault. Good luck, Jamal Agnew and Dan Arnold, which is typically a pretty good plan. But, Agnew's been doing it for him. He got his first receiving touchdown in the NFL last week. And, he's continuing to become a bigger part of that offense. I'd expect for him to see close to that 8.3 targets per game and see if he can do it again this week.
All right. Hunter Renfrow. Why are we starting him this week or flexing him this week?
Okay. First off, I like Agnew. I picked him up on a couple teams. I have him in Scott Fish. I have him in a couple dynasty leagues. The coach said, I think last week, one offensive coordinator was like, he's one of our top 3 guys. He's one of our main guys now. They've allowed Laviska Shenault to essentially play out of position on the outside, and Agnew has filled in well in the slot. So I think he's definitely a guy whose arrow is pointing up. However, he's going up against Buffalo, number 1 against wide receivers in fantasy points. And I think they can also probably rattle Lawrence a little bit and, probably limit the effectiveness of the quote-unquote offense on the Jaguars, who could only put together 7 points against the Seattle defense, who's not as good as Buffalo. Hunter Renfrow, on the other hand, is facing a team who's in the Giants, who's 19th versus wide receivers. He probably won't see a huge lead for his team, so it won't be where they're just going to salt the win away and just feed Drake and Jacobs. I think Carr's going to have to throw at least a little bit. And who does he throw to? Even when Ruggs was playing, he still was throwing to Renfrow a lot. I think he had one game of 5 targets, 1 game of 6, and the rest have been 7 or above. I think he's a half PPR monster. And I think he's going to get a lot of looks this week. Especially now that not that they're the same type of player, but especially now that Ruggs is out. And so I think in a battle between 2 sort of middling slot guys who have to rely on heavy targets to get you those points, I prefer Renfrow in the matchup against the Giants, against Agnew against the Bills.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the Las Vegas Raiders, despite what happened with John Gruden, they're pretty good, right? I mean, they're 5-2. They're tied with the Ravens and the Bills at that mark. They've been playing lights out. And what is the formula for playing lights out football? You have a balanced rush. You have a balanced offense. Josh Jacobs, they can set up the run, which sets up the pass. There's the threat of the running game there, which keeps defenses honest. You going against Buffalo this week with potentially no James Robinson and relying on Carlos Hyde, I'm not so confident that that's going to be helpful for the receiving game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So with that being said, I'm going to go with Hunter Renfrow against the Giants this week, even though I was not the judge and Nate, you were. So sorry about that. But let me ask you, do you agree or do you disagree?
I in this matchup, and it took into the very end, and the swaying of the pendulum came down to exactly what Brian was kind of saying, is that it's a battle of slot receivers. And a slot receiver, realistically, in a matchup against slot corner, that arrow points in the way of Hunter Renfrow because, unfortunately, Agnew gets Taron Johnson, who is a really good slot corner. He's really, really good at keeping – he's bad at, he'll allow some catches, but it won't go for yardage. And that's what Agnew's done. I mean, he has – you look at, last week, 6 catches, 9 targets, 38 yards. The touchdown saved the week, and that's what I see out of him this week. Is I see 7 to 8 targets, 5 to 6 catches for 40 yards, and he has to get in the end zone versus the matchup with Hunter Renfrow against Darnay Holmes, who has been just getting lit up this year. So that's why it swings in Hunter Renfrow. But overall, I really like these matchups we had as a whole. Very intriguing, real life scenarios that people might have to make a decision on. I mean, that is a true deep flex off. God bless you if you do, because it sucks making some of these calls because I mean, they're hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's why we're here, to help give you the best advice out there, so we can help you win your matchups each and every week. All right, let's round out the show by going over our busts. Let's go with the quarterback position. Tyler, who's somebody that you're not too keen on this week?
Even though I was arguing for Jeremy McNichols earlier in this episode, I'm going to go ahead and say Ryan Tannehill is going to bust this week. That team has been run to pass all year, and you're just not going to be able to do what you did with Derrick Henry. You're not going to have as effective a play action game without Derrick Henry. Teams are just going – I mean, the Rams are essentially just going to focus on A.J. Brown and beg them to run the ball and throw it short and limit big plays and limit them getting in the end zone. So, I think this team will eventually figure out what their new identity is going to be without Derrick Henry. But the first week against Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald and now Von Miller, I'm not betting on them to do much this week.
Okay, at the running back position, Brian, who's somebody that you're thinking is going to underperform?
So here are some guys who have done well recently, and they are ranked 11th, 12th, and 14th, respectively, in the Fantasy Pros Half PPR rankings for Week 9. However, they are going up against the 3rd, 5th, and 7th best defenses for fantasy points against running backs, and that is Damian Harris at Carolina, Elijah Mitchell versus Arizona, and Khalil Herbert at Pittsburgh. Probably some tough matches, and they're going to underperform their ranks.
Nice. So I'm going to go a little contrarian here. I think Cortland Sutton is going to continue his not hot streak of fantasy performances. Going back to Week 7, 9.3 against Washington, 5.0. Look, everyone loves Trayvon Diggs and what he did the 7 weeks in a row with interceptions in each of those games. But people are not giving Anthony Brown his due. He's one of the best rated quarters for the Dallas Cowboys, according to Pro Football Focus. He's allowing on the season a passer rating by a quarterback of 48.1. Damn, that is pretty locked down, if I do say so myself. You look at what happened last week. Adam Thielen, he was the one receiving option they had, and that was Jordan Lewis in coverage, and Jordan Lewis is their worst cornerback in Dallas. So I think. Cortland Sutton, it's not going to be easy for him this week, so I'd fade him in your matchups. And then Nate with that end.
Yeah, and my concern is the fact that I think people are going to be quick to rush George Kittle back in their lineup this week. We wanted him back in. You invested pretty heavily in him. Chances are you've been kind of swapping in and out each week. Matchup against Arizona is probably about as difficult a first welcome back week as you can get. Arizona is the stingiest defense against opposing tight ends. They haven't allowed a touchdown yet on the season to opposing tight ends, and yet they haven't allowed any production to any tight end. I mean, on average, like 6.5 points per game is what they're allowing. George Kittle's getting eased back in. I do believe that he will try to establish a significant role, but we saw Brandon Ayuk start to take on a little bit more of a role last week. I'm not endorsing Brandon Ayuk. It's scary, makes me a little sick to say it, but about this time last year is when we started to see Ayuk really start to get more involved with that offense, and Debo's obviously been what he's been. But Brian, you talked about Elijah Mitchell being in a bad spot. I think San Francisco's in a bad spot altogether. No left tackle if Trent's out, and them trying to slow down this Arizona offense if they get back to form could be a difficult game looking forward.
All right. Well, thank you very much for staying a little bit extra this week. We got a little 19 minutes over. It's because we are doing our IDP show tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern. We haven't really decided, but you can find out on the different social media platforms as we will announce it earlier in the day. So Tyler and Nate, again, great work on your waiver wire articles this week. Teddy Ricketson has his start and sit article out this weekend. Tomorrow we start our prime matchups at each position, starting with FF Chalupa Batman, aka Zach, giving you the best options at quarterback and tight end, followed with Jonathan Klanowski, who you can see on the Forward pregame show every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern. With running backs, we got Bill Mustafa with wide receivers, and then Nate and I, we will tackle the IDPs to pay attention to going into week 9. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening wherever you listen to your podcasts. So for Tyler, for Brian, for Nate, I'm Jorge. See you all next time.